I tell you that if you don't watch out, you're going to die in an hour. You're going to listen up right quick.
The tyrants and the would-be tyrants have figured out that the best way to control people is not at the point of bayonets and guns, although that's always in the background, but to convince them that they should voluntarily give up their liberties and their freedom. And to do that, they have to create bugaboos that scare people to death, to say, okay, you got to give up your liberty now, and you got to give up your money. We need more taxes to protect you.
That's because fear is not only a great way to get attention, but also gets you to do things you might not otherwise. When you step back a little bit, there's a lot of things you wouldn't do unless you had that knee-jerk reaction, unless your attention was always brought to the next thing, and you were always in this reactionary mode. Once you get out of reactionary mode and you start to look at what you're actually doing, you actually might do things a lot differently.
Can determine society's beliefs in the way that you're programmed based off of the results that we get in our lives, because by your fruits you'll know them. The results are just a mirror that reflect back to us our subconscious programming about our life in the world. So we're programmed to not be free, we're programmed to not be rich, we're programmed not to be healthy, we're programmed not to be happy, and guess what else we're programmed to do? We're programmed to do things we don't want our entire life and just settle and think that we have to follow the rules that were built by a previous education system that was trying to turn everyone into drone workers for the industrial revolution in the major corporations and manufacturers of the time. And this system has perpetuated itself, and it's taught you not to think.
But the alternative media looks at mainstream news and goes, look, they're using fear to manipulate you. And then what happens? It's not used necessarily for the same ends in mind, but there is a lot of misinformation within the truth, meaning there is still this fear factor that's used. Fear and manipulation has gone on forever, but there's one thing that's a little bit different these days.
We're what's called conscious co-creators of reality. The world is mostly made up of people that don't realize the power that they have. So essentially what happens is they allow the creating of that reality through consciousness through others. So others direct them. This is how I should feel. This is how I should think. Therefore, that's what I project. So the reality that's around us is almost somewhat of an illusion because it's based largely on, well, the old paradigm of control through fear and manipulation, but it is eroding. It's eroding all around us. And I'm looking very positively towards the future.
All the conventional means of control can be bypassed when you recognize you harness a lot more capability than they've led you to believe. This gives them a chance to control you and to get you to do things you wouldn't otherwise, to go to a job that you hate, to get tricked into a monetary system that's based on basically nothing. So if they can do that, can't they do anything? No, they can't. And that's the beauty of it. Once you wake up to realize that you have a lot more capability, that's when everything changes.
And how powerful is human consciousness? And as far as we know, it is infinite in the truest sense of the word. And when we're able to internalize this in our life, I think that's another important component of us defeating this great reset agenda.
Right.
When you realize you have more capability, everything changes, especially when you say no.
When just one man says, no, I won't, Rome begins to fear.
Rome knows that once people say no and start gathering momentum, that things can get kind of interesting. Whether or not the audits actually produce a result or not, is that really up to you? Whether or not we're in war, in a kinetic war with China, is that really up to you? No, it's not. Is it somewhat interesting? Okay, you can go down the rabbit hole of all these different things though, and guess what happens to your energy? You not only go into a lower state of vibration through fear, but you've also used all your time and energy on these things that don't really matter. I like thinking about it in the 80-20 rule, meaning 80% of your time is spent looking at what's improving and specifically what you can do what you can change. Building a community of at least 100 other people is one way you can basically start to build a system amongst yourselves so that when SHTF happens, you have a way to contact each other that doesn't rely so heavily on technology, and you get together and you use the resources amongst yourselves to survive. Now that is realistic, and that gives you hope. That makes you look at things and go, eyes wide open, no fear. And that's the motto of this new channel that I've started to watch. There's a link to it below, but basically he signs off like this.
We'll do this all again tomorrow, right here, but right now at 6 a.m. in the new Valley of the Sun. Eyes open, no fear. Be safe, everyone.
I don't understand everything right now, but he definitely goes against the common paradigm because he looks at longer cycles and a lot of scientific details that I really don't as yet understand. But it is interesting, and the parts that I do understand are a little more eye-opening. They're eye-opening, but there's no fear because it's like, okay, if this happens, what could I do? Some scenarios, there's not much you could do. You're going to die, right? Other scenarios, you can prep yourself a little bit, and that preparation gives you confidence, not fear. Now, the other 20% of your time could be spent on looking at those news articles, survey the wider terrain, so to speak, and to see where some things might affect you more locally. And so you can kind of feed what you might do, not that you will do, but what you might do based on things that are happening out in a larger context. But the 80-20 rule really, I think, works quite well. And it doesn't rely on hopium. You're actually producing results. You're building community, which is one of the biggest parts. Yes, you do want to have those other parts, as Lynette explains right here.
Right, the food, the water, the energy, the security, the wealth preservation, the barterability, the shelter, and the community.
But integral to that is community. You can't do it alone. To survive in an SHTF situation, you're going to need more than just yourself. You're going to need a community. But also key is that you're not lowering your vibration. You're not getting into this fear mentality. You're going forward, eyes wide open, no fear. Because fear, as we know, is the mind killer.
Fear is the mind killer. Fear is the little death that brings total obliteration.
Another channel that I think is great is the Economic Ninja. This guy puts together some great information you're not necessarily going to hear in the mainstream news. He applies it directly to economics and also what you can do specifically to basically shore up the wealth part of your whole system. And that's what I like about channels like that, because instead of just giving you, here's doom and gloom, he gives you practical information that you can actually use. Now, there are other alt channels that they ride on this fear factor, and it's really interesting. I've done number of years of pottery, and during that time doing pottery, I sat and listened to a lot. We're talking hours and hours and hours and hours of different ideas and theories, conspiracy theories, and so on. So I know what it's like to go down the rabbit hole, and I know it's interesting, and it feeds that curiosity. It feeds this part of your brain that just goes, wow, and yet you're depressed, but you want to move on. It's like this tooth that's just like sore, but at the same time you just can't help but it's that feeling of, oh wow, this is so interesting but depressing at the same time. It pushes a certain part of our brain, and it's fun to go down. It's interesting. There is a time for that, but the thing of it is, it can also put you in this low level vibration, and that's why the community part is so important. It's important to connect to that larger community physically on a regular basis, meaning so that you can understand you're not alone. And this part is really, really, really important, I think, because the alt channels like Nino is awesome. He brings some great information, and he has a direct line to 107, and he's really trying to basically put people's feet to the fire when they come on as a guest to really help their audience to understand what's going on. At the same time, he'll have on a guest like he did recently. And the thing that got me was a focus on the map. There was other information in there that was pretty interesting, one of which was said that basically we're going to have to fight this ongoing. Like even when the Orange Man comes back, we'll have to continue to battle and battle and battle. But the thing of it is, there was a focus on the map. And basically it showed kind of like the red states and the blue states. And they compared the two, because they were talking about how laws are going to be in place and we might not be able to travel amongst states. And so basically the whole idea was, better get to those free territories. What a bunch of garbage that is. That is just straight up stupidity. It's the age-old factor. United we stand, divided we fall. That map is a way to divide us. It's like being told in kindergarten, here, don't color outside the lines. The map is total garbage. Yes, on a legal point and under our current system, which is failing and falling, those lines have meaning. But when you actually look at geography and the way society is shaped, I think geography actually plays a huge role in how people shape their thinking. And when you look across the country, there are pockets of freedom. Just because you have that red thing on the map means nothing. You could have a number of people who think just the opposite. The key isn't within this map that somebody else has designed for you. The key is to look at the demographics in terms of who actually is amongst you. What kind of community pockets can you build together? And that's where we kind of come together, and we have these nodes of resistance that all kind of combine together. And in that sense, it's more like a spider web that goes out and covers the whole United States. And we're not talking just about the United States. We're talking about the whole freaking world here. This is so stupid to look at a map and go, okay, well, where's my freedom going to be? No. That's not the way it works. People are resilient, and people do adapt and change. And to just think that you can just go and go to these pockets and that's your freedom, that's not the way it works. You need to build community. And the other part of it is, it sets up a dynamic of them versus us. Here are the lines. There's their territory, and here's ours. That is one of the stupidest things I've ever heard. I was so disappointed by that. I understand, and it made me want to kind of jump in the car and move to one of those places because I can feel the energy. Like, I see these different events going on, and I'm like, I want to go to that one, and I want to go to that one. And I look at how many miles away it is, and the cost, and the time, and so on. And I think about the energy that you get from being among like-minded people that are like, yes, this is awesome. This is what we're going to do, and this is what's changing, and this is how you can get involved. And, and the energy itself is what people need to be ignited from. And that's where community comes in. I think community is so key, and building your own pockets of freedom through, a community of like-minded people is so important. And maybe you think, oh, there's nobody around me. Trust me, there's nobody. I live in one of those spots where I'm thinking there's not too many people around me. But I'm still hopeful. And truthfully, maybe I would need to move to a different area. I don't know. But I'm hopeful as time goes on that will change, and that maybe in some way I could be a catalyst for those people that are on the edge in this community. And the more we see it as a line of them versus us, the more we're divided. And again, united we stand, divided we fall. So I think it's really disingenuous to be sharing a map that has nothing to do with our ultimate goal, which is being united, being the United States of America.
If you're busy fighting with your neighbor or fighting with your friend, you're not coming together in community, and you're not therefore able to make a united stand.
If you look at it, what would the entities who are against us think? This is awesome. We have them considering it's their idea to basically disband the United States of America and be in separate pockets. Wow. And we think that's a good idea. That is propaganda at its best, because you've gotten to a point where you've made the populace think it's their idea and that it's a good idea to basically disband the United States of America. Now, when I say that, I'm referring to the United States of America in terms of the constitutional basis of that. I think if you look at all the countries around the world, people love their country for what it stood for and its ideal. And right now they're wrestling with that ideal versus what they're seeing right now and the way the politicians and countries are behaving. But it's worldwide. And to think that you can just go into this little pocket of red, let's say, and be free, you're fooling yourself.
I am Locutus of Borg. Resistance is futile. Your life, as it has been, is over. From this time forward, you will service us.
it's important to use that 80-20 rule. 80% of your time building that community and really looking at the hopeful things that are going on. Shoving aside the other news, which you can use 20% of your time to catch up on. You don't have to be in the race for the whole time to know who wins at the end. It can be exciting and you can be in the know and you can talk about it and stuff like that. But in the end, it's going to drain your energy when all the time it's fear, 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 fear. The problem is when we let our subconscious be hijacked by those in control, and they do that through fear. And the ultimate propaganda, when you think it's a great idea to basically be fearful and to shrink down and to hide, that's not a good idea. It's just not. This is a time to band together into communities and to really make a difference with where you can. If you're on that lower level of vibration and something happens, let's say aliens or catastrophe from above or actual war, any of that happens, you're already in that state of low level fear, and that fear has taken the fight out of you, and so you can be much more easily manipulated, much more easily kind of going off the cuff, and much less prepared and resilient to band together and really just stay the course, so to speak. So if you found this video helpful, be sure to give it a like. Thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you next time.
And we don't need everybody. We just need a very strong core that's verbal and says no.
When just one man says, no, I won't, Rome begins to fear.
We are not done and we are not defeated. And don't you dare give up. What remains of goodness in the world depends on you saying no.